You made it to day 29. We are in Ecclesiastes today, and we're going to continue interpreting passages of Scripture. Okay, so we're in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 14. We're going to look at this main verse right here, which is essentially all about the unpredictability of wisdom. And we're going to do what we did in the last kind of workshop, day 28, where we went through the gospel and we plugged a portion of Scripture into its surrounding context, right? And so we put that piece of a puzzle into the bigger picture. We plugged that little piece into the full puzzle. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to look at this section in Ecclesiastes. We're going to zoom out a little bit, look at Ecclesiastes chapter 1. We're going to zoom out, look at the whole book of Ecclesiastes, and the main point of that. We'll zoom out, look at the Old Covenant, and we'll zoom out one more time and look at the whole Bible. And then for today's homework, you get to meditate on these things and think through the connections between this one verse and all the surrounding layers of context. All right, so Ecclesiastes 1:14. It says, I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity. Or in the Hebrew, hevel, which is almost to reach for smoke, to grab for the smoke. There's something there. It's not an illusion, but it's not something that can be fully controlled or manipulated or even grasped onto permanently. You grasp for it, and as you do, it's gone. So that's why it's striving after the wind. So, the wise man here is communicating that he has seen everything done. He's seen kingdoms fall. He's seen kingdoms rise. He's seen rulers. He's seen, everything that there is essentially to experience in this human life, in a general sense, of course. All those broad categories. He's essentially seen it all. And he's going, you know what? I've concluded that everything is a grasping for smoke. It's not useless. It's not pointless, right? But it is unpredictable. It's almost like the dice will roll how they roll. It's a striving after the wind. That's what he explains what this vanity is. It's actually striving after wind. So the whole point of verse 14, the data here, is that wisdom is unpredictable. I mean, that's what this little section is about. In verse 12, he goes, I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. So he applied the wisdom he had to seek and search everything done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. It's busyness, right? And he goes, I've seen it all. Right? I've seen it all. So essentially, the preacher here has seen wisdom, he's gained wisdom, he's applied wisdom to try and make sense of life, and he's concluded that, wisdom and life have an unpredictable element to it. You can't fully control life. You can't fully ensure that certain results will happen when you do certain things. In other words, this verse is, hey, there's an unpredictable element to wisdom to make life seem like vanity, a striving after wind. You can apply all the wisdom that God has for you, but there are no guaranteed results. It's kind of like where the dice fall, that's where God has them to fall. So the whole section of Ecclesiastes chapter 1, the main point of chapter 1 is all about the preacher's journey with wisdom. And this is just a part of that larger section, okay? If you zoom out a little more, the whole point of Ecclesiastes as a book is that Ecclesiastes teaches that life is random, life is uncontrollable, life is unpredictable, but it's not pointless to live wise and apply wisdom. It's not useless, okay? The word vanity, again, is hevel, a grasping of smoke, a reaching for what can't be fully controlled or manipulated, right? You can have the wisdom, but you can't control life and all of the randomness that comes along with it. And then the Old Testament that this section finds itself in, this is a part of the Old Testament. The whole point of the Old Testament is the old covenant system God has with the patriarchs and their children, the nation of Israel, and all that brings with it. the destruction of Jerusalem, their disobedience to the law, their refusal to follow God's ways, right? God choosing Abraham and his descendants, bringing them into the promised land. So it's all about the story of God's agreement with a certain family and a certain nation and how they can't do it, no human can, and then enter into the new covenant, right? So we have to learn how to plug this little section or even this little verse into the surrounding context, right? And then the whole Bible is God's story of redemption centered around Jesus as the focal point. And so we need to think through, how does verse 14, let me just think through this, let me meditate a little bit. How does verse 14 connect to the overall point of Ecclesiastes 1, the preacher's journey with wisdom? How does it connect to that? Well, you might say he's concluded by applying wisdom that life has a random, unpredictable, and uncontrollable element to it, right? You can even zoom out a little bit more. In Ecclesiastes, the main point is that, again, life is random and uncontrollable, but it's not pointless to apply wisdom and seek and search out what wisdom has to offer. Life is to be experienced and enjoyed, though you can't fully control everything that happens. It's still worth living, right? So how does this fit into that idea of the whole book of Ecclesiastes, which is, apply wisdom, but life is random and uncontrollable? How does this verse relate to that? How does it connect to that idea? What are the parallels? What are some similar ideas? And then again, zoom out and think about the whole Old Testament. Essentially, God's journey with humanity and a chosen family and a chosen nation and the covenant he makes with them, right? And how all of that falls apart because humanity can't do or uphold their end of the covenant, right? Think about how this verse relates to that whole Old Covenant system in the Old Testament. And then I want you to think, well, how does this verse fit into the whole narrative of Scripture, the whole story of how God redeems through his Son humanity and fallen creation? Because it can seem like all is vain. I'll give you like a little, a little practice run. When I think about the story of redemption and how this verse fits into that, you can look at the world around us, the broken, fallen state that creation is in, and go, you know what, it's all vanity. It's not worth doing anything or applying wisdom. And God's saying, actually, new creation is coming. My kingdom is coming because my Son has made way for you to be a part of that. So applying wisdom is not vain. It's not useless. But know this, that until new creation comes, the world as we know it has an unpredictable, uncontrollable, random element to it. And it doesn't work the way it should because something is broken, and it points us to Jesus, who fixes everything and brings in new creation. Something like that. So in today's homework, you're going to do what you did in yesterday's homework, and I really want this. You're going to get out of this whatever you put into it. So I can't tell you to put a certain amount into this. I'm just going to let the chips fall where they do, and you think through this, you pray through this, you meditate on the Scriptures, and I want you to connect this little verse to all the surrounding, outer circles of Scripture, and then do this in your own personal Bible study today, all right? And I'll see you guys in day number 30. Let's go. I'll see you guys there.